the light between worlds. In the coastal city of Aethelgard, the air always tasted of salt and summer. Dara spent her afternoons on a weathered wooden bench by the promenade, watching the ships disappear into the horizon. She was a woman of logic and tangible things, finding beauty in the way light hit the leaves of the trees. To Dara, the world was exactly as it seemed, and she liked the comfort of its predictability. Her quiet life changed the morning she found a stranger washed up on the silver sands. He wasn't like the sailors or the tourists who frequented the coast. When he finally opened his eyes, they were the color of a distant nebula, swirling with hues of violet and deep space blue that Dara had never seen in nature. His name was Vael, and though he spoke her language, he carried himself with a grace that felt ancient and heavy. Dara took him in, offering him a place to stay and clothes that didn't shimmer like stardust. Vael was fascinated by the simplest things, the steam rising from a tea mug, the ticking of a clock, and the way the rain felt on his skin. He told her stories of a place where cities floated on clouds and people could command the elements with a whisper. Dara would just smile, thinking he had a very vivid imagination to cope with his trauma. "You don't have to make up stories to impress me, Vael," Dara said one evening as they walked through the city square. Vael stopped by a broken fountain that hadn't worked in years. He placed a hand on the cracked stone, and for a split second, Dara thought she saw his fingertips pulse with a soft light. Suddenly, the water surged upward, dancing in the air in a perfect spiral before falling back into the basin. Dara blinked, certain it was just a coincidence of old plumbing finally giving way. Vael tried to explain his truth many times. He spoke of a rift in the fabric of space that had dropped him here, and how his strength was tied to the alignment of the stars. Dara would laugh and point at the moon. "So, do you come from up there?" she teased. Vael looked at the moon with a deep, aching longing that made Dara's heart ache. "Further," he whispered. Dara reached for his hand, wishing he could just be a normal man from a nearby town. The peace of Aethelgard was shattered when a massive construction crane at the harbor snapped its cables. The heavy steel structure groaned, tilting dangerously over the crowded walkway where Dara was walking. People screamed and ran, but Dara tripped, her eyes widening as the shadow of the falling giant loomed over her. She was frozen, the logic she relied on failing her as the metal screeched through the air. Before the steel could crush her, a blur of motion intercepted the fall. Vael stood between Dara and the wreckage, his feet buried deep in the asphalt from the sudden force. He didn't use his muscles, he used his will. A shimmering dome of golden energy erupted from his palms, catching the weight of tons of steel as if it were a feather. The air hummed with a resonance that made the very ground vibrate. The world went silent as Vael gently set the crane down in an empty lot. He turned to Dara, his eyes still burning with the brilliant light of another galaxy. For the first time, Dara didn't look for a logical explanation or a hidden wire. She saw the truth written in the glowing lines appearing on his skin, and the way the gravity seemed to bend and warp around him. He wasn't a traveler from across the sea. He was a miracle from across the stars. With his secrets revealed, Vael feared Dara would look at him with fear. Instead, she walked to him and took his still glowing hands in hers. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you," she whispered. Vael smiled, the light in his eyes softening into a warm glow. He looked at a small, swirling crack in the air nearby, the rift that had brought him here. With a final pulse of energy, he reached out and shattered the rift into harmless sparkles, choosing to stay in the world that held the woman he loved. Life in Aethelgard returned to normal, but for Dara and Vael, everything was new. They sat on their favorite bench, the one where Dara used to dream of distant horizons. Now, the horizon was right beside her, and it was more beautiful than any ship at sea. Vael still marveled at the taste of tea, and Dara finally learned to look at the stars not as cold points of light, but as the home of the man who chose her over the entire universe.